I am Tara from Courageously Living, and you are tuned in to a live stream. These are our live on Wednesday nights, and we really just kind of go with where commenters are going. I've got a couple topics that I want to talk about, but otherwise, these are kind of your chance to ask different questions, ask things that you are concerned about, ask things that you want more information on. Sometimes we've done some tarot, like a mini tarot lesson. Last time we went really deep into some like people's family issues. So really kind of a broad range of what we do on these lives. Super excited to see you. So welcome. The pup is behind me. She says hi. She definitely likes to be acknowledged as I start these lives or sometime during these lives. All right, so one of the things that I want to talk about is I want to kind of check in with everyone. How are you feeling? There is a lot of energy moving. There is a lot of upheaval in people's personal lives, and there's a lot of upheaval in communities, and then that kind of just expands to upheaval and chaos worldwide with current events. So just checking in with you. How are you doing with all the current events, and are you paying attention or not? Doesn't matter one way or the other, but I will say the more that you kind of end up down the rabbit hole of current events, it is harder to kind of spiral up and out of them, because headlines are actually designed to elicit a emotion or a feeling from you. Usually fear, usually anger, usually upset, more typically negative emotions. Now, that said, all emotions are actually good and feelings are good. It's just a matter of how fast you actually move through those emotions and feelings. Instead of, see, I told you she's behind me. Instead of getting stuck in them. And when you're doom scrolling, you can actually get stuck in those kind of fear-based, anger-based emotions. Hello, welcome. And where are you from? I always love to know where people are from. Hello. Awesome. So where are you all from? Just getting started, just talking about, you kind of want to be a little cautious of getting too wrapped up in all the current events and headlines. That's not to say they don't exist. That's not to say that they're not affecting you. But I will say the more that you connect with them is kind of that downward spiral a little bit. So hello, welcome. Where are you all from? Nice to see all of you. It's this evening for me, but it could be early morning for some of you. And the thing with everything going on right now in the world, with all the current events, ooh, Thailand, excellent. What time is it in Thailand? With all the current events, again, it is set up to give you, to evoke an emotion from you. Even though the current events are awful, there is a lot of energy trying to shape how you view the current events. 7:05 a.m. Okay, so 12-hour difference. Excellent. Last week we had somebody on from Turkey, I believe, and it was like 3 a.m. So you are actually at least, like what I would consider kind of like a regular morning hours. So welcome. Is there stuff going on in current events that you want to kind of talk about and kind of want to reframe a little bit so you can kind of get out of that like doom scrolling piece and maybe look at things in a little different way? Or is there stuff going on in personal lives that you're looking at to reframe a little bit, want some guidance on how to do things? Because that's the thing is there's all this chaos going on in the world right now with all the current events. There's so much polarization. And then on top of that, we are also very, very much in a time of personal events going on in our lives that are causing us our own chaos. All right. Maybe we could talk about how to deal with breakups. All right. So breakups can be really hard, and there are on our personal level, and it kind of impacts everything that we touch and we deal with. And sometimes we only think of breakups as like romantic partners, of marriages, but really you can have a breakup of some losing a job, or getting a different manager that, you know, maybe you really loved your original manager and now you've got somebody you can't stand. So there's all different ways that breakups kind of come into our lives. And what's really, really important is to feel your feelings. We are such a society that we're like, oh, we're just going to push it down. We're not going to actually talk about it or acknowledge it. And sometimes you don't need to talk it through with any other person. You just maybe need to journal about it, or, you know, for a nature walk and just really allow your emotions to the surface, you know, and say, you know, that it's okay to have all of your emotions for that breakup. And the other thing that we don't talk about with breakups is it's a lot like grieving. There's those stages of grief. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the 7 stages of grief, but I do think it gives a nice framework. And so there could be an hour that you're like really upset, and then there could be an hour that, you know, you're kind of laughing at a memory of that person or that situation, because it also can be a situation that you're going through with a breakup. And allowing those emotions to come up to the surface for you is a really, really good way to help you move through the breakup so that you can actually start to heal. And the other thing that's really, really important is send yourself love, and send yourself a respect, a respect and a support. We don't connect with ourselves enough to really allow ourselves that extra support. We always want to fix it right away. And sometimes with breakups, we can't. So any other question, like you want to go deeper with the breakup stuff, kind of reframing it. Reframing a breakup is allowing stuff to end in the time that it's supposed to end. That person, that job, that relationship, that family dynamic is ready to end at this time, even though it might feel sudden or might feel that, you know, you still want to hang on. There are times in our life that it is time to let something go. And breakups can be one of those kind of like sudden moments, kind of like the Tower card in Tarot, especially if we're kind of clinging to something that we don't want to let go because this is all we've known, or this is what we've known for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is. We tend to, I got a giant rock here, but we tend to really hold on to it. And sometimes the best thing we can do for ourselves is to allow ourselves to let it go. Yes, we were going to get married until the last moment. She said no. Kind of hard to talk about it. Yes, that is super hard. And you don't have to always talk about it, but you do have to acknowledge it for yourself and acknowledge the moments that you know, have your emotions. And, there's probably emotions that you were happy and probably emotions you weren't happy in the relationship outside of, the breakup right before getting married is a really hard time to go through a breakup because you guys were, definitely planning your future together in a very concrete way. And all of a sudden that changed and that was an upheaval for you. So be gentle with yourself. We do not do a very good job at being gentle with ourselves. We try to just, move on and say, oh, yep, I am good. And really, sometimes we just need the support of ourselves to actually help move through the breakup. And again, we also have this weird thing of, well, you got to be over it. That happened 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, whatever the time frame is. You get to choose how long you want to, I'm going to say the grieving process, because that's really what it is you're in a grieving process, and allow yourself time to grieve. And that's okay. It's okay to be sad one moment and angry the next. Kind of going, well, couldn't you have told me earlier before we got really close to being married? Maybe she couldn't. Maybe it had to get to that point for both of you to learn some soul lessons, to allow yourself to be that vulnerable and then kind of expand from there, even though it's hard and even in the moment it doesn't feel like that. But sometimes when we have those kind of moments in our life, it really does force a different direction on us in a way that we may not have been willing to see before that. Do I believe in God? I believe in a higher power. I don't necessarily call it God or goddess. I am usually more one source. But the essence of that divine love, I definitely believe in. And I do believe a lot of times we are down here to help all our souls evolve and to learn lessons that are sometimes really hard and really painful as we're going through them. And as we look back, we can be like, oh, I see how this made a different change in my life, a different direction in my life. So that is kind of where I look at it from, is most of the things that I think I don't necessarily think are predestined, but I do think there are things in our life path that we're meant to kind of experience. And it also could come from 5 different ways. It's not necessarily that it's gonna be a breakup right before a marriage. It could be another, really bad breakup of a family situation, or somebody dies. So it's kind of like, how I look at it is kind of that free will of allowing the situation to give us the lessons that we are ready for at this moment. And it may not be, we understand them all right now. It might be 3 years later, we're like, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense. What happened there to where I am now? So so you're from you're from Thailand. But I'm also very much into if other people believe in God and goddesses, also totally true as well. So I'm very much what people believe in. I will use like energy from gods and goddesses as well. I'll kind of go like, hey, this is kind of what's going on in my life, which which entity might kind of, that essence might come help me. Hindsight is 2020. And sometimes those lessons that we learn, we don't necessarily learn them right away. They kind of have to fester for a little bit and allow our own processing to happen. And so wherever you are on that journey with that breakup is fine. Allow yourself to be where you are and give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. Awesome. All right. Other questions? Like I said, Wednesdays are definitely a free range conversation. We can, talk about kind of more of the day-to-day stuff like the breakups, and then we kind of went into the spiritual stuff of believing in God or source or creator. Excuse me. So definitely good. I'm really glad. So definitely allowing kind of whatever is coming up for you. And there's a lot coming up. There's a lot in our personal lives and a lot in the collective. So having that, I better start working through. And again, don't force yourself. If you're not in a position to feel like you are ready to move forward, even just with your own person, then that's fine. Allow yourself, if you're still in that, if it's still really new, or even if it's not, like, where are you allowing yourself to feel that grief? Because as you feel the grief, that helps you actually start to working through it. When we try to suppress our grief, we kind of like skim the surface a little bit of working through, but you've got all this stuff kind of underneath that you're like, well, I don't have time to deal with that. And what happens, what I have found, what I've talked to with clients, because I see individual clients too, the link is below for my website, but what I've seen happen kind of time and time again is when you don't kind of deal with this stuff under here, you think you're fine, and all of a sudden something small or something kind of little like happens, and all of a sudden all of that stuff comes up to the surface all at once. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute, I wasn't planning on that. Well, because you hadn't dealt with anything down here. You were just trying to say, yep, I'm good, I don't see anything, we're just gonna keep going. And when you emotions up, that's when you actually can start to move through and work through. Does that make sense? But again, you're not forcing it, you're just allowing it. So that is a really big deal for people, is we want the instant answer, we want the instant fix. And when we talk about, especially matters of the heart, there isn't always an instant fix. It is a little bit, sometimes that we have to take time to process, to just allow whatever is coming for us. And sometimes the best thing that you can do to work through is go for a walk in nature. Nature has incredibly healing abilities just by being in nature, if you can, be in water. Water is all about emotions, or walking by a lake, walking by a river is going to allow some of that emotion to kind of start to show up for you. All right. What other questions do we have tonight? This is one of the things I absolutely love about Wednesdays, is I have no idea where we're going, and I love it all, because bring it on. Like, let's have some fun with questions, or let's be serious with questions. We just, had some serious questions too. And that's kind of how we've done some of the past weeks too, is we'll kind of have a mix of, you know, serious personal questions and spiritual questions. So one of the things that I want to bring up right now, if nobody else has a question, but let me know in the comments when you have a question, is our ability to find love right now, and more of a divine love for ourselves. With all of this chaos in the world, it's really, really easy to focus kind of on all the negative stuff and not necessarily focus on the divine love, the divine spark that we have within us. And we do have a lot of access to divine love if we choose to tap into it. But it's really hard when everything is in such chaos and upheaval. So one of the things I wanted to do tonight for you was to pull a couple cards. This is Love and Connection, I believe, from the universe. And so let's see what card is coming up. All right. Talking about being gentle with yourself, talking about, you know, having yourself be front and center. Give yourself more credit. Give yourself more credit. We can be so incredibly hard on ourselves. We can find every single negative thing that we have an issue with ourselves, whether it is a physical appearance, whether it is how we reacted to a fight, whether it is how we react to our day. How often do you actually stop and give yourself credit for what you've actually accomplished? Even if you give yourself credit for what you accomplished today. Maybe you got 3 things on your to-do list done. It doesn't matter that you had 50. 50 was probably an unrealistic number of to-do items you were going to get done today. But give yourself credit for those 3 items that you got done today. Or give yourself credit for something that you did at work that, you know, had been just kind of sitting on your desk, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to grab that. Give yourself credit for getting up this morning. Sometimes we just take everything for granted and that we expect that we should do it all. So give yourself credit. And the other card that came out is you will find what you seek. So again, allow things to kind of build for you. We want such instant gratification in our society. We've been trained over and over again to want things instantly. And this is saying you'll find what you seek. Also, if you just kind of allow the universe or allow God to bring that to you. You get to choose what you allow in. One of the things that I do a lot, because I do a lot of intention setting, is I will say, what if I allow, accept, and receive whatever I want coming into my life. So talking about, you know, divine love, like I allow, accept, and receive divine love into my life. Connecting with spirit, connecting with my higher self or source, however you want to phrase that. But one of the things that I've really found helpful, and the people that I've worked with found helpful, is to really think about it as you're accepting it, you're allowing it, and you're receiving it. And that can be, you know, even if you want to be open to new love or open to, you know, a really good day at work or a new job, like, are you allowing yourself to actually allow the new in and accepting it? One of the other things that I do a lot is I ask myself, what if I believe, feel, and know something is coming into my life? So like divine love. So, because a lot of times what happens is logically we're like, well, yeah, I want divine love in my life, duh. But we have blocks, and a lot of times those are unconscious. So if you can say, what if I believe I'm allowed to receive divine love? What if I feel I'm allowed to receive divine love? What if I know I'm allowed to receive divine love? Because then what happens is it starts to kind of break it down for you a little bit differently. And you're like, oh, this kind of makes sense now. I feel that I am worthy to allow divine love, but I don't believe that I am. And so what happens when you do that is over time, you're going to kind of go up and down on the numbers. If you kind of put in numbers with that, like if you kind of go a 0 to 10, like, what that number is today, what if I believe in divine love and it's a 4 today? Tomorrow it might be a 3, because you're reprogramming your brain and your mind to give you the possibility that you're willing to believe something different. And when you do that, it allows whatever you want coming in, like that divine love, to start giving you a new neural network. Because we know our problems really well because we keep running them over and over and over and over again. The stuff that we actually want in our lives, we don't keep running over and over again. Or if we do, we don't necessarily believe that we are valuable or that we are worthy of a relationship in our life, or that we are worthy of financial freedom, or worthy of showing up for ourselves. We've been trained to show up for others and not ourselves. So you might have to work on that for, a few weeks. Sometimes I still have to, work on that into my daily intentions, that I am worthy to show up for myself and to have that internal validation. We live in such a society that they want you to have all of your validation coming from external instead of internal. And the more that you can switch your validation, your worth, coming from inside of you, you actually get to be stronger in that, and the noise out here doesn't affect you as much. So welcome in. You see we have a couple other people in. So what questions do you have? We've already kind of had a wide range of questions tonight, and I am happy to kind of go with where anyone wants to go with questions, either kind of spiritual or more practical, or kind of how you're blending the two. I think sometimes when people think of practical or spiritual, they don't really think that those two intertwine very often. And I actually find the more spiritual I am, the more practical makes sense, because I can blend those two together. They're not separate for me. And I think we a lot of times expect that they are completely separate. We're either doing the spiritual thing or we're doing the practical thing. And that doesn't really work, because we're a whole being. We are meant to kind of flow between this practical 3D world that we're living in and the spiritual. Like, how are you integrating that into your daily life? One of my intentions that I set every day is I am allowing and receiving beneficial surprises, miracles, and magic into my day. And that might be I see a rainbow. It might be that I see a cool bird. It might be that I have a conversation with somebody that I really, really enjoy. So it's not necessarily a huge surprise or a huge miracle, but it's allowing that energy to flow into my life and then acknowledging that surprise or that magic, that little moment of magic that happened during the day. And that's one of the ways how I blend spiritual and practical, is allowing those little moments during the day. All right, what other questions do we have? I will say I am not an astrologer, but I do follow astrology pretty closely. And we do have a lot of movement in our outer planets and our personal planets this month. So you might want to check out Pam Gregory for her astrology updates. She kind of does at least a couple during the month. And then she's also got a whole bunch of other really cool conversations that she has. So I will put her link below after the live. The other person who just did a great energy update is Lee Harris. And he talked a lot about the energy of October. And I've felt it, other psychics have felt it, other intuitives, astrologers have backed it up, that we are in a really intense period right now in history, and one that they actually can't find in astrology that is completely duplicated. A lot of times what happens when planets are in certain alignments or planets are in certain houses, they can go back, astrologers can go back in history and say, oh, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened. For example, one of the things with Aquarius right now is it has Pluto in it. And typically when Pluto is in Aquarius, there seems to be a little bit more like revolution energy, kind of power to the people, switching that like top-down hierarchy structure to a more equitable structure. And that's going to happen for the next 20 years. So they've already kind of tracked that cycle. But what they have also found is that there's all these other planets that are coming into play that we don't have a time in history that every single one of these planets have lined up. So it is really, really dynamic in this month. And I know other people have said dynamic. And again, check out Pam, check out Lee. He does an intuitive monthly update, but the two of them together are really, they kind of come at it from two different ways, but a lot of times their information overlaps. So I would highly recommend both of them, Pam Gregory and Lee Harris. And Pam is the astrologer, but astrologers, psychics, intuitives, empaths, we're all kind of predicting that this time was going to be chaos and upheaval for much of the entire world. And to me, that kind of makes it a little bit easier to go through. Like they've talked about this, that, 25, 26, and into 27 are all going to have really intense moments of change and chaos and upheaval and old systems breaking down and allowing new systems to come in. And on the surface, that sounds great. We're like, okay, let's go for change. And then when that change starts to happen, we're like, oh, well, I didn't necessarily mean my marriage was going to fall apart. I didn't necessarily mean that, we're in more violence in the world wide. I didn't necessarily want that. And one of the things to keep thinking about is this is a time to have those things come to the surface to say, hey, this isn't working for me anymore. Maybe you had been in a marriage that you were just sludging through and saying, yep, I'm making this work. And all of a sudden you're like, no, it's really not working anymore. I'm either going to change, going to go to therapy, with my partner, or it's maybe time to actually end that relationship. The worldwide stuff, they're doing a great job with headlines, trying to scare everybody with all the different stuff or try to create division. What happens is when they create division, it's harder for people to come together in one cohesive voice. What is happening though is, so if we look at some of the political violence that has happened recently, I'm not mentioning any names because again, I'm trying to keep this channel a little bit more upbeat, but there has been a lot of political violence, and there has been this thing of, oh, I'm gonna attack this person. I'm gonna attack this person because of how their views are with this violence. And that's kind of being also fed to us and really encouraged. But then all of a sudden, people on both sides are like, well, wait a minute. This information that you're giving us doesn't totally add up. And so the more that people on both sides of a situation, both sides of political spectrums, of both sides of even just with humanity stuff, people start to question the narrative that is being fed to everyone. It kind of starts to bring these two sides or four sides or however many differences there are together going, wait, I think there's something different here. And that's what part of all of the astrology, the psychics have said is that unfortunately, we sometimes need these giant events to help bring people together, to help people break through their old beliefs and structures of, we're on this side, we can't talk to you on this side because this is a totally different belief value system. Well, the more we talk to people, the more we interact with people, especially in real life, but online as well, you start to kind of realize that people are actually wanting the same thing. There is a very few part of the population in the entire world that is gung-ho about war. That's starting to shift. Before, in history, they could kind of segregate the war topic and say, oh, it's over there, it's not happening here, or this is exactly, what the conflict is, and we're on the right side of history. And now, because we do have the internet, we do have things, we're hearing from both sides of the people being affected. And people are going, well, wait a minute. This is impacting people's lives in a different way than we had been hearing about before. Maybe it's time to change our thought process of just going right away to violence, to war. And the more people that do that, the more energy comes in that's ready to change. And that is part of the time we are in, is allowing those big changes to move us forward as humanity. And is it going to get rougher? Yes, I 100% believe it. And I wish we could get through it without it being a little bit rougher. But I do think we are going to see things kind of keep bubbling up. But the more that things bubble up and the more things that people are frustrated about or people start to question, it's actually shifting our global collective. And that is where real change can occur. And we've had a lot of governments collapse worldwide. We've got other governments on the brink of collapse. Again, it's talking about those old structures. Saturn is completing a 30-year cycle. It's just right now retrograde into Pisces, saying, kind of what isn't working for us on an emotional level. And then it's going to go into Aries, I believe early 26. But again, I'm not an astrologer, so don't quote me on that. I think it goes in on 26. I don't think we get it back in 27. But Aries is all about our identity of self, identity of countries. And we're saying, fine, that 30 years that may or may not have worked for us, for the majority of people, now it's going to start to shift because we have the option to think something different. And that's a lot of what reframing is we're allowing ourselves to think something different. All right. Any other questions, or I'm going to wrap up for the evening? All right. Love the discussion points tonight. Thank yous. I'm always thrilled to be on here to see what questions you guys have, what you're feeling, all of that stuff. If you would like to book a private session with me, you can do so on my website. My link is below. That is the only place that I take bookings through for individual sessions. And a lot of those sessions are, with connection to our intentions of how we are starting to live more intentionally with pretty much whatever is going on in your life right now. So one of the things that I always end with on my videos is give yourself a self-hug. Self-hug, do both sides. You have a private side and a public side, and both sides really could use your extra support. And I will say, when you first start to give yourself a self-hug, it can kind of feel weird. The more you do it, you're like, oh, I am showing up for myself, no one else, myself. And that is really, really empowering. And on that note, I will see you next Wednesday at 7 p.m. when I go live again. Otherwise, we'll see if I can get some videos up this weekend. Not sure I will, but that is the plan and that is the goal. All right, bye for now.